Hey everyone, what's up? This is Simon back with a video on list performance. So we've talked about this topic in the past, anyhow. And with Ionic 4, there are again two ways to increase the performance. So we can use sort of an infinite scroll for our list, and we can have a little bit different list setup with virtual lists. So let's dive into this. I've already created the blank new Ionic application as always, Ionic Start Academy scroll blank. Actually, we don't need to pass the type Angular because that's the default, so we can leave this out. And then we can bring up our Ionic serve, which looks like this if I put some colors to the header. So let's dive into what we need first of all to get started. That's the HTTP client module, because we're gonna make HTTP requests in order to show some data in our infinite list or virtual list. So as always, import and add it to the array of your imports. Then we're already done with this. So now to our home page. Let's have a little function to load some data from an API. So therefore, we're gonna have to use private HTTP client from Angular common. Then we might have an array of users. That makes life a bit easier. If you work with an observable, it's not that easy to just concat the data to the array. So in our case, we will have a simple array right here. And we'll also remember on which page we were in order to maybe load the right data. I'm not sure if the HTTP client or the HTTP call that we make is actually using the page, but so what we're gonna do is we will use the random user API. I really love the API. Gives us a nice set of results in our app. So let's try to get the data, HTTP get, same URL that I just pasted into my window. We're gonna get 20 results just for the testing here. And we will actually also, I'm not sure if I refresh this, I think I anyway get different results, but I'll also append the page, and the page would be this .page. Okay, so we can subscribe to the result just like always and hopefully get something back. So let's log out what we got. Or let's put it just like this. And then, as I said before, we can now easily add this to our array by calling this dot users concat combines two or more arrays, and then passing in the results key. You can already see that we have to access this key. It will look a bit better in a second. Let's just run this. So hopefully you're familiar with JSON. I've seen people having problems with JSON data and accessing the keys over and over again. So if you got any questions, as always, let me know them below the video, and make sure to call all the functions that you want to test. This is a very good tip and always helps a lot when programming. So right now we can see that we get the data in form of information, whatever, results, page, not really that interesting, and then the array of results that is added to our users array right here. So each of the results has a name, hopefully, name, first and last name. We got the picture, which we can use. We got the email. So let's build our infinite list based on this data. So we go over and why not have cards? So I just found the card. No, I don't know how the syntax was. Yesterday I found a shortcut for Ionic card full. Yeah, there we go. Great. And now I remember that I don't want it to have a full card. So great success again, Simon. Okay, let's create cards based on our users. So let user of users. We don't need the async pipe because this is the observable and we're just setting the data here. So then Ion item, let's fill it with some data like Ion avatar slot start. and then use image, and the source would be user, picture, whatever. We can use medium, we can use thumbnail, doesn't really matter at that point. And we could also have a little label after the Ion avatar in the item using the first and last name. And we can also use the text capitalize directive to immediately make them uppercase. As you see, all the first and last names are in lowercase. It's just something of the API. So right now we see 20 results, and at this point when you display your API data, you come to think, okay, how do I load more data? Do I load immediately 500 results, or how do I handle a massive amount of data? So in our case, or with the first example I want to show you, we use infinite scroll, which means once we reach the end of the list here, we want to trigger a new load to the API and get 20 more results for the next page. There's a lot of pagination going on in some frameworks. Perhaps your server is already implementing something like this, which makes life a bit easier. So to implement it, we can I get like infinite scroll? Well, I kind of enjoy the auto completion. The threshold that we can define means how far do we have to scroll down, or at which position does the function that we define here get triggered. Normally I think it's at 15. Why not? Well, let's make it to 5 just to see a bit what's going on. Actually, this doesn't really matter, but you can specify whatever you want as the loading spinner and also the loading text, loading more users. But most important is the functionality that you need to implement for the Ion Infinite. So this is called once the action is triggered, and there we will have an event. So we need this event in order to, one, mark the component as completed, so the loading disappears. And also, once you reach the end of your list, so let's say you normally get 20 results back and suddenly you only get 18 back, that means there are no more results, and then you should disable the component, of course. So therefore, let's say in a normal case, you would increase the page on which you are, or that you want to pass to your API. And then let's reload, no, not reload, but reuse our load users and also pass the event to it. Then we also need to define it right here as a parameter. We will make it optional. So only if the event is set, we will call event target.complete once we're done loading the data. We can also log out the event right here just to see what's going on. And what I said as well, I don't know, let's fake this by saying we want to have a maximum pages of 3. Normally you get the count or how many pages there are in our API response, so you could set it right here. We will just assume that the maximum pages are 3. So then you would check something like if this dot page equals this maximum page. I didn't type HTTP, really, I didn't. I didn't. Trust me. So in that case, call event target and then disabled equals true. And all of this should now help us to call this reload logic once we are approaching the last 5% of the list. So let's see. I will make it a bit faster, but you think you saw what was going on. Let's try this again. Watch for the bottom of the list. And now it was loading more users. So we made 2 reloads, which means we're now on page 2 or 3. No, 1 more was possible. Now we're on page 3. And now you see we can reach the bottom and no more reloading is triggered. And all the previous entries are added to our list. So that's the general idea of the Ionic Infinite Scroll. I just mess them up sometimes as well. So with the Infinite Scroll, your API needs to I would say, have the right design as well, because not all APIs have this pagination enabled, or in general work with a page number. Of course, if you get control over it, you can easily do it. And then you can use the infinite scroll with maybe a little bit more than 5%. That was like, I don't know, it wasn't that good, I would say. I think 25 would be better. As I said, I think the infinite scroll, let's bring this in, the threshold is by default, 15. So let's see what happens now. We go bottom. So you see, if we approach it slowly, we kind of don't even see what's going on sometimes, which is basically what you want to achieve, right? You want to show the data to the user in the fastest possible way without any distractions or showing any loading times to the user. So the user really thinks of an infinite list of content, like on Instagram or whatever, Facebook. Okay, so that can already increase the list performance if your API design is right, if you're able to reload the data from your API. Next step is the virtual list. That's an interesting concept because we don't need the load more, of course. No, because it requires a bit different setup of our elements. And we can have a lot more, let me bring this in, information in the virtual scroll. So we can have custom functions calculating different headers or dividers. We need to pass in approximate width and height in order to make the list appear right. And the general idea behind this is that, let's say you have 1,000 entries in a list, you don't want to immediately display and render all of them. So the virtual scroll gets this data and only displays what you can see on the screen, plus maybe a few at the top and at the bottom. So if you're coming from iOS, or I'm sure it's on Android as well, there's a reuse logic that just creates the cells that you see in the view, and then once you scroll to the direction, reloads or reuses also the cells that are scrolled out of the view. So enough of the theory, or theory, how a native speaker would maybe say, and let's see how we can approach this. So actually we don't need the load users as it is right now. We don't have an event. We just want to load, let's say, 100 results, and also we don't need a page. So we get the 100 results, and then I will bring in something just to actually order the data. What is going on today? Simon, please. I think I have to go to the door. My ears have failed me. The door wasn't ringing. My English is going away. I think this might be the last video on this channel. So let's try to use our time that is left while my brain still works. We get 100 results. We sort them by the last name, which is then, maybe the log makes more sense right here. So we can see that the data is actually kind of sorted, and I will get rid of this one as well. Because as I said, infinite scroll and virtual scroll, what is it called? Infinite list? I don't know. But there are two separate things to talk about. So now we see it is kind of sorted by the last name, hopefully. I don't know how to sort these. If you're able to read them, let me know if they're sorted as well. So then we can continue with the setup of the virtual scroll. And maybe I will just pick this one. And our items are actually the users. Let's say let item. I don't know, but this looks not like it should be in my eyes. I think this should be slot start. So why are the docs here wrong? I don't know. I really don't know. Interesting. Anyhow, this was the picture dot, I don't know, medium, and then item name first, item name last. So that's just taking the Ionic code for the virtual scroll element, and let's see what happens. So we got 100 results, and we see the list is pretty functional. We can use it, and it was rendered, I think, pretty fast, but of course 100 results are not that huge. Maybe can we get more? I don't know. I really don't want to destroy the API or something, and don't mess up their service because I really enjoy them. So let's see what's going on with a 500. Well, but you see, it's still, we got a list of 500 elements, which is already pretty big, but we can scroll through it pretty smoothly, I think. And I think that's a huge win. Let's expand our example a bit more by seeing what's going on. So we got the Ion virtual scroll where we pass in the items, and then every item gets access to the item of the iteration through this statement. And then we got the Ion avatar at the front. As I said, it should be slot start in my eyes. And then we can also reuse the label part that we just had a second ago, but then let's call this user or let user, so then it would be fixed again. Now, one more thing that is shown on the page that might be interesting is, or two things actually. First, we can at the top level pass in approximate item height, and I think, what is the approximate height in here? Let's say 70, and you need to specify it as the pixels. This will not have really an effect right now, but normally this helps Ionic to calculate the right height already in the beginning, so you don't see any strange effects if the cards then suddenly get bigger or smaller later on. So try to be as accurate as possible, but I also didn't see anything really going on if, I don't know, if I put this like 400. Let's see what's happening. I think there's pretty much, yeah, maybe it's just, well, it's kind of, I think there's kind of problem with the rendering in the background going on. So I definitely think it should be close to the reality. So try to use this. And then one last thing I wanted to show was attaching a header function to our virtual scroll, which is actually something that's pretty interesting. And something I thought about for other projects as well, although they don't really need a virtual scroll, but I just kind of enjoyed this functionality. So this function gets called with the current record of the, or the current element, however you want to call it, the record index, and also the full array of all records. And maybe we go through this logic one by one. So if the record index is 0, it means we're the first element. So in that case, we should definitely return whatever divider for the first row. And I just want to use the first letter of the last name, so we get the separation in alphabetically order. So record name last. This gives us the first character of the last name, and then we make it uppercase. So then another little if, no, actually not, two ifs, because we will have a little looking back. I implemented this first in the other way, so I tried to get the next item, which is a bit more complicated because the next item might not exist, and then the header is shown at the wrong place. So okay, I returned to some logical thinking and thought about, okay, if the previous item is different than the current item, then I should display a divider. So I get the first character of the previous and the first character of the current record. So this gives us the previous. This is, of course, the current of the iteration. And then if the previous isn't equal to the current, I will return it to uppercase, and otherwise, just as a fallback, return null in that case. And I think to display the actual header, we're gonna have an ion item divider. Is this working? Kinda. I don't know why I always open the brackets and then it's wrong and I mess up everything. Anyhow, this should then be first of all the virtual header. Actually, I get code completion for this, which is kind of strange, but let header and then give out the header. Let's use color primary in here as well. Or let's use the primary color for the whole divider. Should also look nicely. So now we're using this header function. We're having an item divider that's a virtual header, and then we give out just whatever the function is returning. And as we can see, first item is an A, then at some point we get to B, and then we can scroll through this and we see at all the positions where a new last letter begins, we got the item divider. So a really cool way actually to create those dividers for your list. I had problems with list dividers and creating them dynamically in the past if the data wasn't, or well, in general it's not that easy if you just use an ion list. So with this header functionality, maybe this is also part of Ionic list at some point. It would definitely make kind of sense to have a header function in here as well. So if somebody from the Ionic team is watching, maybe it might be a good idea to have something on the regular list as well. Anyhow, that's already everything for today. I hope I started the record again, which I think I did. So hopefully you enjoyed the video about performance between Ionic List, Infinite Scroll and Virtual Scroll. Both are great ways to improve the performance of your list. So the one reloads entries once you reach the list. The other one holds all the data right in the beginning and just displays what needs to be displayed. As I said, both are great and improve the performance of your list. If you enjoyed the video, of course, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Check out my ionicacademy.com. I would love to see you inside. Have a great day as always. Take care, and I'll see you inside the next video.